What's up, guys? Welcome back to Elderwood Games. Thomas here, and today I kind of wanted to do more of a, I guess, like a thought experiment, or kind of just thinking through some ideas that I had recently. Over on Hellstorm Wargaming, he posted a video talking about basically, has sportsmanship ruined 40K, which obviously was very clickbaity and got me to watch it at least, and I'll have it tagged up here so that way you can go and watch his video as well, where he talks with one of his viewers during a live stream about basically about sportsmanship and 40K, and of course we all want to have good sportsmanship in the game, but his point was that now, especially in the upper tiers of competitive 40K, they know their lists and the statistics so well that basically whatever they say they're going to do is going to happen, outside of very limited kind of, spikes and low spikes of rolling, where, more saves are made, fewer saves are made, fewer hits are made, that sort of thing. Basically what is said is what's going to happen, and they know each other's lists and they know what each other's army does because they're talking about it so much that there isn't really a lot of surprises in the game. And it kind of was an interesting thought to me, because while I think that having things up your sleeve is a good thing, I don't necessarily like how some of it can feel sort of like gotchas. You know what I mean? An example that was brought up is they were relating it to trading card games. So like Magic the Gathering. So that's a card game that I'm very familiar with, as you guys already know. It's a game that I really enjoy playing. And I do like that I have tools at my disposal that my opponents may not know that I have. However, I think the key difference in trading card games that I think is an important one to note is that while, yes, your opponent has a hand of 7-ish cards, and you don't know what those cards are. However, in a game like Magic the Gathering, after the first turn or two, you know what colors their deck includes, and therefore you know what kind of cards are going to be in that, especially when you get into formats such as Standard or Modern or Pioneer, where there's a limited pool of cards that they can be playing with. Basically, once you see the first couple of plays, you know what could be in their arsenal, and especially in the matter of Standard, while obviously you can't have necessarily have perfect knowledge of every card in the Standard legal meta at the time, the reality is not all 250 cards from all like 6 or 7 Standard sets are going to be played, right? It's going to be a percentage of those, outside of sort of the jank decks that people play more for fun or, are testing. You kind of know what decks are leading the meta. And all that to say that while, yes, you don't know what your opponent's deck is necessarily, and you don't know what's in their hand, you do know what they are capable of, which I feel like in 40,000, you have access to that same information. But I also think that it's a matter of how the games are played. With Magic the Gathering, even in formats like Commander, you might be looking at a 1-2 hour game, maybe longer if you're playing like lower powered decks. But I would say on average for like my play group, our games are in that like, probably like 1 hour to 2 hour window. Probably a little bit lower, but that's just kind of roughly what I'm setting up. And think about it this way. For that 1 to 2 hour game, it's like 5-minute setup, maybe a 5-minute conversation beforehand. We play the game and then we're done. And the setup for the next game is basically just grabbing another deck if you're wanting to play another deck, and then you just reset and go, right? With Warhammer 40,000, on the other hand, or any war game, you're getting a table, you're setting up the table with terrain, you're setting up your objective markers by choosing your deployment, you're setting up markers for your deployment zones and that sort of thing, setting up the terrain, and then you're going through alternating, placing your models, and then the game starts, right? So setup for Warhammer is almost the same amount of time that I spend on a quick game of Magic. And that's just the setup. And then the game is, 2-3 hours. Some of us at my shop are still kind of new and we're doing things a little bit slower. So we're having fun and it's more casual and that sort of thing. But in the time that it takes us to set up a game of 40,000, I could have already played a game of Magic the Gathering and been on our next game. And by the time I finish my 40,000 game, I will have played 4 or more games of Commander. And that basically means that for every hour of Commander gameplay, like the amount of field bads I have in that game and the amount of time it takes me to do another game of 40,000, I could have played 3 more games of Magic to kind of get the salt off, you could say. But in Warhammer, there's a lot of, devoting resources to all your plans that you make. And of course, you're gonna have the one-offs, right? Like you're gonna move in a way, and it's gonna be an Overwatch that you weren't thinking of, and they're gonna roll hot, you're gonna roll poor, and you're just gonna lose a unit, and that feels bad. But that's something that we both have access to, and we both are equally capable of doing. When it comes to your army-specific rules, so for example, one that caught me not too long ago was with Emperor's Children. I believe it's one of their battle line units, has basically the ability to follow you if you fall back. So basically they can make a normal move to chase you. And how it's worded, I believe they're able to move into engagement range. So basically I just tried to push back enough to be able to shoot into them, but then they just like moved right back into me. And in a similar vein with World Eaters, if you damage a model or kill a berserker, they can do a d6 plus 2 surge move into you and end an engagement range. And I think those are very flavorful for what the army does. However, the issue is that when that happens, when those things happen, there's a little bit of a feel bad, right? Like I fill my stuff back to be able to shoot into you, not knowing that they had the ability to move in. And I think part of that is on me not asking, but I'm also torn a little bit because I do think there is a bit of fun to be had with those sort of shenanigans, but I just don't think that the 2,000 point scale Warhammer is the game that we want that kind of secret information in. And of course you could say like, oh well, like play the same army again, and now that you know it, like you have that knowledge going forward. But the reality is not all of us are even able to play weekly, right? So who's gonna be able to remember all of your stratagems, which I am like scrolling through the app all the time, just confirming all my stratagems and that sort of thing. And then also remembering what other like stratagems and abilities my opponent's models have to know when to and when not to fall back and that sort of thing. And what's interesting is when we talk about sportsmanship in Warhammer 40,000, it almost is more sportsmanlike for you to admit to your army's gotcha mechanics, right? Like if I ask like, hey, can this unit follow me if I fall back? Then you as the opponent, if you're basically going to be like, oh, I don't have to tell you that, which I mean, guess technically you don't have to, but people really aren't going to like play with you anymore because that's not a fun like back and forth, right? We both want to be bringing our best to the table, regardless of what our armies can do. And knowing that my units that that need to fall back to shoot can't fall back and shoot properly, like that is a detriment to me. Now I can't move in a way that allows my units to shoot, and you're not going to pursue me basically into a situation that is even more of a feel bad. Like the fact that my stuff can't shoot is feel bad enough, and that sort of thing. And we look at Magic. Magic has what is known as secret information, like unknown information. Like your hand is unknown unless an effect that is in play causes you to reveal that information, right? I can't just ask my opponent, oh, do you have a counterspell? That'd be weird. Like that'd be a weird thing for me to ask in that like atmosphere, right? Or what's your next card? That's something that neither of us know, unless of course they've like scryed or have found a way to reveal their top, right? There's information there that is purposely hidden, and it is meant to be that way. Like, that game is meant to be played in a way where you are two planeswalkers battling out with your different spells, drawing knowledge from your library and casting those spells against one another. And that is the like flavor of that game. And in 40,000, there's a part of me that feels like maybe there is room for secret information, but I am wary to have it be specifically gameplay mechanics that have the ability to cause like major feel bads and potentially just result in like an entire unit being lost out of the repercussions, right? So I think asking your opponent, what does this unit do? Can they pursue me if I fall back? Do you have any surge moves or that sort of thing? Or can you move away if I move within a certain distance? Having those sorts of things, those sort of talks and that sort of deal, it's kind of like my interpretation of the like role play aspect, I guess you could say, of 40,000 is like you are commanding an army and your army has all knowledge that your army should have. So for example, the Tyranids, right? The Tyranids are a hive mind, and as long as you're connected within Synapse, you have all the knowledge of the hive mind. The hive mind has pursued and fought many different battles among many different armies. The Tau have also fought many different battles among many different armies, and basically there would be some level of shared knowledge between all these different factions after they figure out a thing that army can do, right? So perhaps a unit of Kroot or a detachment of Kroot have fought against the Emperor's children. They learned about the pursuit, and now they have shared that information with leaders, and that has gotten through this Tau network, right? Maybe, I don't know. Like, I would be interested to know kind of your thoughts on those sorts of things. Like, is that sportsmanship a bad thing? Or do you find it more enjoyable to be able to talk with your opponent about what your armies can do? So that way it feels like you're on maybe a little bit more of an even playing field, and you're not necessarily using tricks, traps, and gotchas to manipulate the game in your favor. But outside of like stratagems and that sort of thing, one thing I would be interested to try would be like secret missions. Like you had gambits and things that were secret to your opponent when you were behind, and if you accomplish those things, you got a significant number of victory points that could lead you to the victory. And I like that aspect, and I almost wonder if having your secondary objectives potentially be your secret missions. Because in Crusade, you have your agendas, and your agendas aren't known by your opponent. So you do have things that you are trying to do without your opponent's knowledge. And those things aren't affecting the game because they're not impacting your opponent that much. In fact, at all. If you have no prisoners, for example, which is where you get 2 points per unit that you take down to a maximum of 5, if that's your secret objective for that turn and you're just killing units, then your opponent is just like, all right, you're just killing units. And maybe if you focus in more to be like able to kill 3 units to get maximum, they might have an idea that you're trying to do no prisoners, but they don't know that that's what you have, and only you do. And then at the end of your turn, or whenever you whenever you would score points for your objective, you then reveal, I had no prisoners at this time, and I killed 3 units. That gives me 5 victory points. And there are some, like the ones with actions, you would have to say like this unit is performing an action. You wouldn't have to say what action. You would just have to say, hey, this unit is performing an action. And you would likely need, if that were the case, to also have some kind of marker, I think. Even if it's just a courtesy, I guess, to basically be like, I'm going to mark this guy. This unit is doing an action on this objective or within this terrain feature, that sort of thing. And I actually think that could lead to some more interesting gameplay, because if your opponent doesn't know that you have engaged in all fronts and you're trying to get into all 4 table quarters, then when you move into a table quarter and they could overwatch that unit with a big group of flamers, they don't know that they probably have an idea that you do need to be there for whatever your objective is. And it might lead to more interesting decisions, because then it's like, okay, I'm going to move, my battle line into this quarter of the map. And then your opponent will go, okay, you've moved into a new quarter. You might have engaged in all fronts, so I'm going to overwatch this unit. And in reality, you maybe didn't need to move them there, but it was a bait. And then you're actually just going to deep strike something into their back line, and you actually had, behind enemy lines where you're trying to get behind their deployment zone. And I think that could be a lot of fun. I actually think I might I have a game planned on Friday with one of the guys from the shop, and I might ask if they want to try something like that. I think that could be just something interesting to try and shake some stuff up. And I think for me, at least, and this is my opinion, and that's, I think everyone probably does have an opinion on this, and I'd be interested to know yours, but my opinion would be that I would want my missions to be secret, like what I need to do in the turn. I guess the interesting thing would be tactical or fixed missions. Like, should fixed missions be secret? I think they could be until you first score them, and then once you score one, then you reveal it, and then that one is known. And then that's just a consequence of having fixed missions, which it already kind of is, because you have to reveal those anyway, and they're the same all 5 battle rounds and that sort of thing. But it could be kind of interesting to be like, I'm going to run fixed, and you have them hidden, and then it's like, okay, I've engaged on all fronts this turn. I'm going to reveal that engage is one of my fixed missions, and I'll score this amount of points. And then when I reveal that I also have, what's the other one? Establish locus. I had a unit that performed an action, boom, bop, bam. Establish locus is my other fixed mission. You now know that for the rest of the battle, my army's goal is to be getting in your back line, getting in all 4 quarters, and establishing locuses in different zones. So now that information is revealed, you, as my opponent, know how to counteract that. Versus choosing tactical, where your scoring isn't as consistent maybe as with fixed, but you would be able to kind of reveal them as you go and that sort of thing. And it could be kind of interesting as well. This is a little bit further into magical fairy land, right? Like, this is more like designing an alternate version of Warhammer. I think an interesting bit would be that you actually draw 3 secondaries, and then you can shuffle 1 back. So that way it's secret, but then also there's an added amount of choice that you have. So that way it can be a little bit more similar to how Crusade works, and that you are able to choose your agendas at the start, and you're trying to do those throughout the game, where you would be able to kind of like, all right, look at 3. All right, so these are the objectives that are coming in from command. These are the 2 that I think we can do. We're going to shuffle this one back for now, and then play out your turn and do the thing, and then kind of go about it that way. And I think there could be a level of intrigue to that would make it a bit more kind of like, oh man, what's my opponent trying to do? And can I interpret what they're trying to do from the actions that they are doing? Because it's like, if a unit moves into my deployment zone, and then during the shooting phase, they're performing an action, 9 times out of 10, that action is going to be either establish locus or sabotage. If they're in terrain feature, it's probably sabotage, and I know that I have until the end of my turn to stop it. And if it's established locus, well, then I know that it's just like, all right, well, I should have overwatched them as they came into my deployment zone if I had the ability to, and that sort of thing. So it's kind of an interesting, I think I would really like to try that. I think that would be a really fascinating way to play objectives, secondary objectives, of course, and being able to do that and test it out and see how it feels. And then, of course, you could tack in like the challenger cards and stuff too, and having those be secretive as well. And then I think that would be a interesting kind of trap mechanic, in that you pull a challenger card, it's a shared pool of cards. I think it's 10 or 12, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you basically draw one that's secret information. I don't know what your challenger is, And then you can say like, okay, I'm actually going to use the free stratagem that's on here to move an extra 6 inches or advance a full 6 without rolling and that sort of thing. And it's kind of like, that's the gotcha, right? It's like, oh, actually at the end of my turn, I'm going to score 3 because I have a unit that's all the way out here by itself. And that sort of thing. And I think that could be a lot more fun. And I feel like pulling off a strategic thing versus using this fixed ability that my stuff has to do something unexpected. I don't know. I don't really know why that feels better, because it feels like you are kind of still working that same kind of strategic ploy to be able to do that. But for me, it just feels like accomplishing a secret goal feels more fun than gotcha-ing somebody or like activating someone's trap card. At least in this game, because like I will admit, like for like Magic the Gathering and like Commander, like getting to pull off like the gotcha of like, oh, actually I have a counter spell, so I'm going to counter that, or using kind of an unexpected card to be able to stop something. There is satisfaction in that, but that's like an expectation of the game. And I wonder if it's just, maybe it is that like the sportsmanship of 40K has ruined that aspect of the game, where at one point maybe it was more of a like kind of cold-blooded, like catching each other off guard all the time kind of game. And I don't know, maybe it would feel better if that was the game that I was introduced to, right? That it was a like secretive game. But that's just not how I learned. Like I learned that, you know, there are things that are kind of gotchas, but you're not, you know, you are allowed to ask and you are allowed to have that conversation. And I know for me, like I'm always free with my information for this game, because like I was saying before, like we spend an hour setting up, we're going to be playing for the next few hours. Like I want to have a good time. I want my opponent to have a good time. And I feel like if we're not exchanging equal amounts of information, it's not going to feel as good or as fun. And I even noticed that if I play someone that is a bit more spiky, like more tournament grindy, and they're being a bit standoffish with information, if I'm also standoffish with my information, then we're just both having a bad time. So I tend to just like still give some information, even when my opponent's being a little bit odd, just because I want to have that kind of show of good faith, I guess you could say. But I would be interested to know your thoughts. Do you think that having some secret information in Warhammer 40,000 would make it a better game? Or do you like where it is now, where all the objectives are known, all the secondaries and challengers are known, and you can freely exchange information with your opponent about their stratagems and war gear and their unit abilities and that sort of thing? Let me know down in the comments below. But thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next one.